What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for another Tottenham update. Not back in the studio just yet, but we are still recovering from the trip that was Japan, Korea, Singapore. But there is quite a bit to speak about today. And let's start off with, sorry, it's a bit of a, not the usual setting. My laptop's gone in for repair, so I'm recording on my phone and trying to read off a different laptop all the news. But we're going to start off with talking about Veliz. Mati Moretto says that Espanyol has closed the signing of Veliz on loan. Fabrizio Romano confirmed that and said Espanyol have agreed to sign Veliz from Tottenham, verbal agreement in place. And he also followed up saying that Tottenham are signing all the documents now for Veliz to join Espanyol on loan. No buy option clause included. He'll be back at Spurs in June. So that progressed quite quickly.
Yeah, I mean, out of nowhere. Obviously, we heard yesterday about Southampton being interested, but apparently that wasn't true. I was quite excited about that because Southampton, promoted club, Premier League, given Premier League experience. So I was actually really positive about that deal, but it turned out not to be true. Espanyol, from what I can gather, what do they get? They get promoted back to La Liga last season because they weren't
in the top division.
So they're now in the top division. So a promoted club in Spain. Look, I think experience overall is a good thing. This is a player, obviously, we're talking about, hasn't actually still at this point of his career had much experience in Europe at all, because obviously he's played in the Argentinian league last season, barely played for Spurs, and then went on loan to Sevilla and barely played. So I think the general experience at Espanyol, despite it not being the Premier League, will be positive and will help build him as long as he gets regular minutes. But it's going to be tough. A promoted team going up into La Liga next season. I don't imagine they're going to be, dominating many games. He's going to have to scrap. He's going to have to fight. Hopefully, he gets a platform to show what a good striker he is and get chances to score goals and show his ability in front of goal, which is a problem we've had with other loan deals, such as Parrott and Scarlett, where they've gone to teams potentially who have been on the back foot a lot, and they haven't been able to show exactly what they can do all the time. But hopefully it's a really positive move for him, and he gets a lot of game time. That's the main thing. As long as he gets on the pitch and he's playing regularly, hopefully he'll be able to develop.
Yeah, I mean, I would have preferred it if he was to go to an English club or, a league that was a bit more physical, like the Premier League. But I agree with you what you said. As long as he's getting minutes in the first team and he's playing week in, week out, I think it's the main thing. And he's going to Espanyol to replace Martin Braithwaite.
Oh, that's he's got. Well, I don't know if it's big shoes to fill, but it is definitely
shoes to fill.
It is definitely shoes. And also, you mentioned there's no buy option, so obviously, I don't know if there was any rumors about him leaving, but clearly, with Spurs aren't considering selling him at this point, even though it's only been a year and he's barely played. So hopefully that's with a view of him being part of the first team for next season. We'll see how he gets on.
Yeah, and I mean, he's come under a lot of slack by certain fans in the last 6 months, and I don't really understand why, because I feel like he's impressed for the most part whenever he's stepped on the football pitch for Tottenham. His attitude and application on the pitch, I think, has been good. He's got his first goal against Brighton, and he's had a poor loan spell where he was used as like a pawn between the manager and the club bosses out in Sevilla. So I think he's been dealt a bad hand with that loan spell. I just hope he can go there and prove a few people wrong, because I don't really understand the negativity surrounding Veliz.
Yeah, I agree, and I know Tottenham at the moment are we have a lot of talented young strikers, Lancashire, and we've got Scarlett there as well. So definitely, he has to fight in terms of his future for his place because of all the talent we have. But there's no reason not to be negative about him. He's still very young. He clearly has a lot of talent, and it's all about allowing him to develop and giving him that space.
Yeah. Next up, I spoke last night with Brian on an update about Emerson Royal, about that one being very, very close to happening. Some journalists, reliable journalists, went as far to say it's imminent. Well, Fabrizio Romano said today that next up, direct contact with AC Milan to seal the Emerson Royal deal for 15 million fee plus add-ons. It's almost there. So hopefully we'll get the here we go maybe later on tonight or tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I mean, I'm done predicting when this one's going to be done. I just do think it will be done at some stage, and I think it's a good fee. It's sad how it's all panned out with Emerson, because I was really hopeful when he first came he would be here for a while and be a bit of a better player, but hasn't turned out that way. But I don't think he leaves here. I think he leaves as a bit of a cult figure. And I definitely think if he ever comes back to the lane, he'll be get a good reception. But I think it is the right thing that he leaves.
Yeah. Let's talk about Richarlison now, because Sam C, doesn't he work as in the back end for United Stand or
Yeah.
something like that? If he's built himself up a few reliable sources which he brings out. But today he's saying that Al Ahly will have numerous meetings to discuss the go-ahead with targets for the summer transfer window after they receive their budget for this window. Strong interest in Richarlison, but nothing close to being done yet. And there was also other reports coming out of Saudi saying that they have very strong interest in Richarlison, and Richarlison's potentially open to going there. So do you think this one has potential?
Well, if they're willing to put up the 60 million, I do think Tottenham will be open for it. Obviously, the big thing was whether Richarlison would be, and they're now suggesting he might be. We all know at the back end of last season, he put out that social media post saying that he's going to be playing in London next season, or in England, next season. So that suggests he doesn't look like he's viewing next season anywhere else but Tottenham on that regard. But look, maybe, Emerson leaving, he's losing one of his Brazilian friends in the squad, and maybe he's looking around thinking, I could just go and earn a lot of money, and that's what I want to do for the next couple of years. I mean, that could be the case. It's a hell of a lot of money. I'm sure he's going to be offered by Al Ahly, I think it is, or one of them. I'm not sure. Ali. So I do think Tottenham are definitely open to it. I do think Al Ahly, I can see why they would want to bring someone like Richarlison to them. It's all going to be relying on whether Richarlison wants to accept that move. And if he's willing to do it and he says yes to them, I do think it's very much possible this deal could happen.
I think he would have known within the club, maybe the plan was to move Sonny back out to the left. And he's thinking, well, I can really make the number 9 my own spot. And now he might be seeing all these rumours within the club. Spurs are looking to bring in a number 9. Ange Postecoglou has made that very clear. And then he's seeing all these heavy rumours about Dominic Solanke. Do you reckon that plays a part in it as well?
As I've said before, I think Richarlison is definitely a player who needs to feel loved and needs to feel like he's a big part of the team. And we've seen he's a very emotional player, and he relies a lot on confidence. And if he doesn't feel he's important, he doesn't feel like he's one of those relied on players, I think it can affect him. So I do think all this talk will definitely get into his head. Obviously, he's a very popular member of the squad. We've seen that. He gets on with everyone. But if he feels like he's being pushed out, maybe that could definitely lean towards him thinking, maybe I will accept this deal. But I would be more than happy for him to stick around as long as we sign a striker as well as him and keep him around for competition as a rotational option. But if we get a big fee and means we sign a striker and maybe a winger on top of that, I'm also happy with that to happen as well.
Yeah, I feel like this one's going to happen. What do you think?
Definitely is. There's been a lot of talk about it, hasn't there? Ever since the end of last season about the Saudi bid coming in. So has never really gone away. But then other deals like, Conor Gallagher also never really went away, but that never really materialized. But I can see this having legs. I can see once Saudi come in, I think it could move very quickly. Do I think it's going to happen? I'm going to say, yeah, I think it probably will at this point, but we'll have to wait and see.
I agree. Let's talk about reports coming out of Turkey, a publication called Saber Karimzi, I think it's called. Galatasaray will insist to sign Sergio Reguilon permanently in the coming days. And, we're hearing that there's not much interest around for Sergio Reguilon at the moment. Do you think this is one that he could potentially go for? They are in the Champions League.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Reguilon said he wanted. He wanted a team in Europe, and that's the kind of stage he wanted. And they're actually building a fairly decent team there as well. Obviously, they won the league last season, didn't they? By just about. I think it was 100 points to 99. I think Fenerbahce finished second, and they got a lot of good players there. So maybe he's looking at that and thinking, actually, they've built in quite a good team. Maybe I do want to be part of that. And Turkey, it's obviously not the best league in the world, but it's a lot of very passionate fans, and it's a fun place to play potentially. So maybe Reguilon might look at that project and think, maybe I want to be part of that. I wouldn't be too surprised. But this is a player who, over the last few seasons, he's playing in the top leagues, and he's not that old, so I can understand him thinking I might be better than the Turkish league, but he could be on a good wage, a good team, so maybe you go for it.
Yeah, I got a feeling it could be maybe a loan till the end of the season, run down his contract, and then he'll have his pick at the end of the year to see where he goes. I know they're saying on a permanent deal, but I feel like it could be a loan.
Yeah, loan makes sense as well.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the big news of the day. Fabrizio Romano saying that he understands that Tottenham are pushing to get Dominic Solanke deal done. Talks are underway with Bournemouth. Solanke has given the green light to Spurs as negotiations are ongoing to find an agreement. Tottenham wants Solanke as exclusively revealed last week. And we heard from Paul O'Keefe yesterday that Dominic Solanke is itching to play for Spurs. It's just about Spurs now finding a deal with Bournemouth. Do you think that happens?
Do I think Tottenham find an agreement with Bournemouth? That's anyone's guess. We know how Tottenham are very stubborn, really, in terms of their financials. I obviously think Tottenham want him. That's clear, and I think Solanke wants it. Obviously, Bournemouth are going to be stubborn, and if they're stubborn on their release clause, and if they say to Spurs release clause or nothing, then I don't know. It's hard to say whether Tottenham are going to stump up that money for him and whether that's something realistic. Maybe it's if Richarlison does leave, Tottenham are more likely to splash out a bit more money rather than look for a favourable payment plan if we can get the money through for issue. Maybe that's the case. But I think we're going to try hard for him. I think we can get a deal done for under the release clause. I'd like to think. I think a 45 to 50 million plus some add-ons. I think Bournemouth would probably accept that, but it's about how stubborn they are. I don't know if they're going to dig their heels in. How many years left in his contract does he have? Actually, it's not.
I'm not sure. Maybe you can check that. But Paul O'Keefe did say yesterday that he thinks that a deal could be done for 55 million plus add-ons, and that would be below the release clause.
Last contract 2027, so he has 3 years left still. So they're pretty well protected the contract wise. For Dom Solanke. So they could afford to hold on to him for another year and he doesn't lose too much value, I guess. And obviously,
I think it would depend as well on how much Solanke actually wants the deal. Is he going to kick his heels in? Is he going to, we've seen so many players push for moves, refuse to train and all these kind of things. I guess it depends on how much he wants it. But I do feel like Bournemouth, if Spurs do go above 50 million, 55 million, I do think Bournemouth will do a deal with us. I believe that.
I feel like in this day and age, player power is getting less and less until they're in their last year of their contract. I feel like when teams are well protected, there's no real incentive, especially in Premier League teams when there's a lot of money for a lot of them. And I know there is PSR rules that does play into it, but I do feel like for a lot of teams in the Premier League who aren't really struggling for money, maybe like they used to, there's less need for them to kind of compromise on their selling price, especially for a player like Solanke, who's so important to Bournemouth. But I mean, Tottenham are clearly making him an M1 target at the moment. So if we're going to be pushing really hard for him, then maybe Bournemouth will look at that situation thinking we could probably use that money and invest and maybe be smart in the window like they have been on so many occasions. So I can see a deal being done for a bit less than the release clause. But if they do dig their heels in, I don't know if Tottenham will stump up the cash. I'll have to wait and see. I mean, should they? Do you think they should stump up the cash for 65 million if Bournemouth are stubborn?
I think a deal can be done for less, and I think a deal will get done for less. Do I think that Spurs, if they stick to their guns, should meet that release clause? I wouldn't be totally against it. If he's the one that they've earmarked as the guy to take us forward and the guy to really suit the project, then I don't think an extra 10 million here makes too much of a difference, to be honest. Yeah, it is a bit high, and we are overpaying a little bit, but it's not the biggest deal. 83.
Yeah, I agree. Look, obviously it's not my money. I obviously, if Tottenham have made their number one target, I want him in for sure. But I know we know how Tottenham operate, and a lot of the times, if the finances don't match up, they're not scared to walk away from the deal. So, I wouldn't be surprised either way if we hear a breaking news tomorrow that Tottenham are walking away because they can't agree a deal. But I also wouldn't be surprised if we hear a deal struck for a decent fee for Bournemouth.
I genuinely believe this happens, and I genuinely believe Richarlison goes. I think that's what's going to be the play by the end of this transfer window. And you're hearing like reports coming out from reliable people saying that Bournemouth are already, trying to sound out transfer targets for the number 9 for next season. When you hear these kind of things, you kind of think like, surely there's a deal to be done here.
Yeah, and I know some people be negative about him, but I was actually looking a bit more into him over the last few days. Obviously, we know how well he did last season, but I was looking at last season he was a very consistent scorer. He never went more than 3 games without a goal, so really consistent throughout the whole season. He was pretty much scoring, albeit not many of his goals were against Liverpool. I don't think he didn't score against Liverpool, City, or Arsenal at all, but he did score.
Arsenal?
No, not from what I saw. He didn't score. He had a good game at the Emirates, but he didn't score. He had a goal ruled out for VAR, which was a disgrace, if you remember. It should have counted.
Maybe that's what I was thinking of. Yeah,
he didn't score, but he did score a few goals against Newcastle and Man United. So he can score against better opposition, but he didn't score against the top 3. And in his last 4 seasons, albeit 2 of them were in the Championship, he has 94 goal contributions in 157 games. So, I mean, this guy is in red hot form. And even in his bad season, 2 seasons ago in the Premier League, where people thought, he only got 7 goals, but he also got 7 assists. So he got 14 Premier League goal contributions, and that was in a bad season, apparently, for him. So I do think this is a guy actually in really good form over the last 4 years, not just last year. So we are getting a striker who's going to be in confident mood and might be ready for that next step.
Yeah, I like the signing. I really do. I think he's perfect in terms of what he brings to the football team, his pressing, his finishing ability, his aerial ability, his work rate. I think everything points in the right direction. I can understand why people are maybe a bit disappointed with it, because it's not the shiny European striker like a Victor Gyökeres. He wasn't called up to the England squad, behind Ivan Toney, who, had half a year out, and when he did come back, didn't get the goals that maybe everyone was expecting. But I think he's gone a bit under the radar then in terms of, being noticed by Southgate, because he's had a brilliant season. Like you said, same goals as Watkins and only 2 penalties. I actually thought he scored a lot more penalties than he did last season, but it was only 2. And that's very impressive in a Bournemouth side. So I like the signing, and I think he'll do really well here. I really believe that. So we'll have to wait and see how that one progresses. And last but not least, let's talk about Manor Solomon. Shea Lugassi says that Tottenham are open to the loan deal for Manor Solomon. According to sources, there were contacts between his camp from clubs from England, Spain and Germany. And Paul O'Keefe says that clubs in Germany and Spain are looking at a potential loan deal for Manor Solomon. And it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Spurs looking to get rid of Manor. Didn't play 1 minute out in Korea.
Yeah, that's what I predicted the back end of last season, that we probably won't sell him, but we'll look to loan him so he can build some value and he can show what he can do on a regular basis, because he was okay at Fulham when he was on the pitch, scored a few goals. He got obviously that move to Tottenham on a free transfer off the back of that, and I think everyone was hopeful that it could be a bit of a bargain. Started decently, but then got had that long-term injury, and then Tottenham are really, obviously we signed Werner on loan now, and if we're looking to kick on, can we rely on Manor to be one of our main wingers when we've got Werner there? Sonny obviously will want to move back to the left as well, so it doesn't seem to be a natural place for Manor Solomon at the moment. And because of that injury, he's been 2 serious injuries over the last couple of years. He doesn't have that much value in terms of, like, when he's fit and firing, this could potentially be a 15 to 20 million pound winger. And that's what Tottenham will probably want for him. But because of his injuries, he hasn't proven that over the last couple of years. So I guess the value that would get for him would be very little. So I think a loan deal does make sense. So he can get some game time, show his value. And then next season, either, if Werner goes back, or if we decide not to keep Werner and Solomon has a great season, maybe we can reintroduce him to the first team. Or we could sell him for, that 15 to 20 million figure we probably want for him.
Yeah. It all just depends on him keeping fit. That's the reality. His injury problems has followed him around everywhere he's gone. And I do believe that if he could stay fit, he could be a valuable member of the squad. But it just remains to be seen, because we never get that opportunity to see it because of his injuries, which is, frustrating. But I want to talk about, just before we go, that, by the way, Spurs have just announced Alejo Veliz loan completed to Espanyol for the season.
Okay.
I believe they've literally just announced it on the official Twitter now. And Jan Min-hyuk has just been announced the Korean Young Player of the Month for the 4th time in a row.
Brilliant, which shows how exciting it is. And obviously I saw there was pictures of him learning English as well. They've sent him to English class under Sonny's instructions, I'm sure.
Can't be
So
touched by the football
hopefully,
club, by the way, to do that because they're paying for it. They're doing everything on that front.
yeah, lovely. And look, they clearly want to support him and they want him to do well in his next step at Spurs. So really exciting. Also, probably might be even more reason why we need to get rid of Manor, because if we're bringing him in and he could potentially be part of the first team as well, then there's even less room for Manor coming in the future. But that's really, really nice to hear. As you say, Manor Solomon has sorry, not Manor, Veliz has been announced. So that's a really good low move. Let's hope he does well. There's a little interaction which could actually impact one of the stories we've been saying. It's not really linked to Tottenham, but it was quite, I'll just go through it. It's a little funny interaction between a Turkish journalist from Galatasaray and Luka Dean. He said that Galatasaray have made a bid for Luka Dean. Luka Dean comments underneath that tweet saying this isn't true. And he then responds to Luka Dean in a reply, this a picture, one sec, a picture of the formal offer from Galatasaray, as you can see here. So I don't know if that could impact Galatasaray wanting Reguilon or not, because they've clearly made an actually official bid for Luka Dean, which Luka Dean didn't believe, which is quite funny. So that could impact the story we're talking about for Reguilon if they're actually going for Luka Dean.
Luka Dean's going to reply now saying it was Photoshop, mate.
Yeah, Photoshop. Maybe we'll have to wait and see. But look, good luck to Alejo Veliz, and we're definitely going to be doing some loan watches there, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. But that is your Tottenham update for today. Hopefully, we'll have some more news to bring you later on. But thank you, everyone, for joining us. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.